Well, good afternoon, friends and members of St. Martin Lutheran Church. I'm Natalie. This is Pastor Jim here. Today is Monday, October the 18th, and we're covering the end of the Mark chapter 10, which is a portion of our gospel reading for this Sunday. So I want to welcome you to those who are joining us live, as well as to those who maybe watch later, and as we continue to encourage our members and anyone else who wants to, as these live streams we do during the week are, in a sense, homework, if you will, for worship. Not required, right? But as we have shared, you get a better sense, I think, in worship when you've taken a careful look at the scriptures prior to worship. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. A couple of announcements. The service for Mark Laverick will be tomorrow here at St. Martin at 11 a.m. There's a visitation today here at the church from 1 to 8, as well as a visitation at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning prior to the service. And as well, want to share with you, for those of you who know Brent Bender. Brent Bender was a former member at St. Martin, a former president of our church council, and he moved to Howell. He lost his son this weekend, his son Adam, who was 39 years old. So prayers for the Bender family as well. And as well as continued prayers for some of the saints kind of struggling right now in hospitals. We have them on our prayer list. You know who these people are. So our reading for today, we're in Mark chapter 10, and we begin at verse 32, and we'll read right to the end of the chapter. So Mark chapter 10, beginning at verse 32. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him and said to him, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you. And he said to them, What do you want me to do for you? And they said to him, Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory. Jesus said to them, You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? And they said to him, We are able. And Jesus said to them, The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared. And when the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. And Jesus called them to him and said to them, You know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, a son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped and said, Call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, Take heart, get up, he is calling you. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, What do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, Go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, once again, we find in our gospel reading the disciples are amazed, but oftentimes the people surrounding Jesus are amazed. The first time in Mark's gospel, anyway, in chapter 1, verse 27, when Jesus heals the man of the unclean spirit, the people who see this are amazed. They're thumbazoed in the Greek. They're so amazed at what Jesus had done. They're amazed at his authority. They're amazed at how he speaks, and they're amazed at his ability to control demons, to control the wind and the waves. And in verse 32, we read that as they were going on the road, they're heading to Jerusalem. Jesus knows he's heading to the cross. The disciples are slowly beginning to realize this point. And it says again, they were amazed, and those who followed him were afraid. Well, they're afraid because Jesus is a wanted man. Even Thomas had said, look, if you go to Jerusalem, they're going to try to kill you, but let us go and die with you. But then again, they don't seem to get it. Now, 3 times in Mark's gospel, Jesus does what is known in theology as a passion prediction. He predicts to the disciples, he tells them of his upcoming suffering and death and resurrection. And this is the 3rd time in our reading. And in verse 33, Jesus says, see, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles, and they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. And the disciples hear this. Now, I think it's helpful for us to stop and take a look at each time Jesus predicts his passion, his suffering. What is the response of the disciples? The first time this happens is in Mark chapter 8, and Jesus says that he will suffer, that he will be rejected and killed, and will rise after 3 days. The response we get is from Peter, and this is when Peter rebukes Jesus, and Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. And then he says to them, he commands them to deny themselves, to take up their cross and follow him. So that's the first passion prediction. Jesus predicts his suffering, death, and resurrection. Peter rebukes him because that's not what's supposed to happen with the Messiah. And Jesus admonishes them to deny themselves and take up their cross. And later in Mark chapter 9, Jesus tells them that he will be delivered over, that he will be killed, and that he will rise after 3 days. And in this instance, the disciples, they don't understand what he's saying, so they're afraid to say anything. They don't respond at all. And then Jesus teaches them that the first must be last, and that those who receive the kingdom of God as a child will indeed receive it. So that's the second time. The third time, his third and final passion prediction in Mark's gospel, and he adds will be delivered over to the Gentiles on the third one. An increasing shameful thing, that the Messiah of Israel would be handed over to the Gentiles, just piles the shame and the suffering that the Messiah will have. So Jesus says, I'll be delivered and condemned and mocked and flogged and killed, and after 3 days will rise again. And then after the response from the disciples, so the first response from his first prediction is Peter rebukes him. The second time is the disciples were afraid and they didn't say anything. So this third time, we're going to get a response from James and John. But later, he's going to tell them that if they want to be great, they must be servant. In fact, slaves, doulos in the Greek, because the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. So after this third passion prediction, we get the response. So remember, first response of his prediction of his suffering and death, Peter rebukes him. Second is they don't say anything, and they're afraid to say anything. But this time, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him and said, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And he said, well, what do you want? And they said, we want to sit at your right and your left hand in your glory. They wanted positions of power in Jesus' kingdom. A testament to the fact that they didn't get it. And I would say really all three of the responses by the disciples to Jesus' passion prediction, really in a sense, it shows their failure. Now, I doubt any of us, if we were in their shoes, would have behaved differently, but it's showing their failure. And failure, and it's understandable because they're on this side of the resurrection yet. They hadn't experienced the resurrected Jesus yet. At the end of the day, all they're thinking about is themselves and what they can get and their own power and their own authority. And after every prediction, Jesus tells them, you must be a servant, you must take up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me. And that those who think they're first are actually going to be last, and vice versa. And then he gets into an interesting conversation with them. And he says, you don't even know what you're asking of me to sit at my right and left hand, that's only for the Father to grant. And then he asks them a question. He says, are you going to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized? Are you going to drink from the cup that I drink? And they say, yes. Again, not really knowing what they're saying. And Jesus says, you will. What he's referencing in this is the cup that he drinks, and the baptism with which he is baptized is his impending suffering. And we know James was the first apostle to be martyred. We read that in Acts chapter 12. John the apostle died of natural causes, but we have reasonably reliable church tradition that he was put into a vat of boiling oil and survived that. And of course suffered exile on the island of Patmos. So yes, these disciples would know what suffering. They would drink from the same cup that Christ drank, and they would see his glory. And this glory that they would achieve because of their suffering for Christ, but they don't really understand what they're even talking about. All they can think about is the things of this earth. And you know, time and time again, and you get this sense when you read through the Gospels that Jesus is you know, he's shaking them. He's shaking us as well to stop spending all of our time thinking of earthly things, that he wants us to think of heavenly things as well. As C.S. Lewis wrote, that, you know, you and I were creatures created by God to live forever. To live forever. To live forever with him or somewhere else. And then in verse 42, Jesus is going to describe to them, he's going to say, okay, you want to be great. I'm going to tell you what true greatness in the kingdom of God is. And then what he's going to do is he's going to contrast how the Gentile rulers lord their authority over people and use their authority to benefit themselves and to uplift themselves. And he says, but it's not supposed to be like that among you. It's not supposed to be like that amongst the body of Christ, where we lord our authority over other people, or we think that we're better than other people. But in fact, we're to take the position as redeemed sinners, redeemed through the blood of Christ and by no other means, that we are to view our life in service to others. As Paul would later write, considering others as more important than ourselves, and doing our best to live that life. And then this chapter closes with this interaction Jesus has with blind Bartimaeus, as he's known, where he cries out, Son of David, have mercy on me, have mercy on me. Jesus, you know, the disciples kind of rebuke him, you know, get away, blind man, you know, we're too busy, we're on our way. Of course, Jesus was always ready to stop and deal with people individually. And his question is great. He says, well, what do you want? What is it you want me to do for you? And he says, oh, recover my sight. And Jesus says to him, go your way. Your faith has made you well. So Jesus kind of says, go about your business. But what we read at the end is immediately Bartimaeus recovered his sight and he followed him on the way. Of course, the way being a reference to how the early Christians were identified. They were followers of the way. The term Christian didn't come along till later in the first century. And I love that kind of conclusion that Bartimaeus was blind, but now that he can see, in a sense, he's saying, you know what? I'm going to always look to Jesus and follow him. Great ending to this chapter. And a great reminder for all of us as well that we should do our best to, and I'm setting the bar low here, spend some time each day not occupying ourselves with all the difficulties of this world. And it can get difficult, I'll tell you. Here at St. Martin right now, there's a lot of activity going around. People in the hospital preparing for a funeral tomorrow, learning of the deaths of loved ones. It can be like a tidal wave that washes over us. And but we remember that we were created to live eternally with God. And also, along our journey, we're called to serve and to do the best we can to uplift others as best we can. So the song I want to sing for you today, Carolina Berg in the middle part of the 1800s wrote this song, Day by Day. Her father was a Swedish Lutheran pastor. She was the author of many hymns. This is my favorite by her, Day by Day. Day by day, your mercies, Lord, attend me, bringing comfort to my anxious soul. Day by day, the blessings, Lord, you send me, drawing nearer to my heavenly goal. Love divine, beyond all mortal measure, brings to naught the burdens of my quest. Savior, lead me to the home I treasure, where at last I'll find eternal rest. Day by day, I know you will provide me strength to serve and wisdom to obey. I will see your loving will to guide me o'er the paths I struggle day by day. I will fear no evil of the morrow. I will trust in your enduring grace. Savior, help me bear life's pain and sorrow, till in glory I behold your face. This is my favorite verse, the third verse, because it's the joy. That verse 1 and 2 about our daily struggles in walking with the Lord, but then comes the joy. Oh, what joy to know that you are near me, when my burdens grow too great to bear. Oh, what joy to know that you will hear me, when I come, oh Lord, to you in prayer. Day by day, no matter what betide me, you will hold me ever in your hand. Savior, with your presence here to guide me, I will reach at last the promised land. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Receive the Lord's blessing. Be a blessing to others. Let's do our best to start thinking of heavenly things from time to time, eternal things, things about service and serving in God's kingdom and what he's called us to do. And I love you guys, and I will see you very soon. God bless.